In light of the success of my previous video, I've decided once again to return to the subject of quantum mysticism. We must show the world, for the defilers and perverters of science, that these people truly are. We must raise awareness about passing around pseudoscience as if it was profound insight into the nature of all things. They will die by my sword of reason, I swear to you. Now actually, I was quite pleasantly surprised with how many of you were actually agreeing with me on this subject, because YouTube is full of these pseudo-scientific nutters. So it was quite a nice surprise to get all the messages and the comments and so on and so forth. So I want to make a few things clear. I am not specifically against alternate ways of understanding, alternate philosophies or sciences in general, viridic psychology, Buddhism, Taoism, Gnosticism, and certain methods of occultism. But what my concern is primarily against is this New Age approach in general. Now, New Age has always had this thing about it where it takes particular phrases, particular ideas from different cultures all across the world at different times, and it will take an idea from one place, say Buddhism, about the fundamental unity of all being, and then it will tie it into something like quantum entanglement, where the ideas are completely separate entities. You simply cannot take a term or a cultural idea out of its context and expect it to serve the same function. These people take mishmash ideas from all over the place and shove them all together in an incoherent ontology. It's like pick and mix philosophy, and to be honest, it's not going to cut it, because it leads to this equivocation that I was talking about last time. It's in Amindim's terminology, which is actually quite apt for describing these people. It's phantasmagorical. It's using being purposely woolly in your terminology means that you can equivocate a concept in Buddhism with a concept in quantum physics, when in fact they're very, very separate issues going. They tend to try to confuse the issue more than it needs to be done, and that's why they use all this woolly logic. So there's equivocation going on. Now, you see, there's a few different ways in which you can use jargon. I myself am guilty of using jargon, as some of you might have already noticed. But it seems very different in the ways that someone like myself or some other rationalist, or so to speak, would use terminology. Now, personally, when I use terminology, it's to reduce equivocation. It's so that you know exactly what it is that I'm trying to say without drawing from it some other interpretation. So I might use a technical notion like supervenience to mean something very, very technically specific that can't really be taken any other way. Now, the jargon that the New Age kind of people use is completely the opposite. They'll use words that are in common use, but they'll use them in very many different senses all the way, and they won't notice the incongruency of their reasoning, and neither will anyone else. Perhaps what offends me most about these people is their sheer audacity. They think that they, and they alone, can perceive reality for what it truly is. Does that not remind you somewhat of religious fundamentalism? They then go on to critique how their views have been cast aside by the religious adherents to scientific materialism or reductionism, when the only critiques that they offer for that particular ontology are moral critiques. If one were to offer me a critique of scientific reductionism in the style that Jae-Won Kim would present it, I would perfectly well accept that criticism, but this is not what these people are doing. During my various musings within the YouTube world, I stumbled across on Contra Wagner's page the 5 cardinal sins of science. Yes, that's right, anyone that violates these is likely to be a pseudo-scientist. So let's go through them. 1. Invocation of scientific materialism in a negative sense, as though it's a bad or inadequate ontology. 2. Invocation of Cartesian dualism. 3. Intentionally or otherwise misguided interpretations of quantum physics. 4. Branding of biologists as Darwinists, and the theory of evolution as Darwinism. This is not necessarily a negative description of biologists in the theory of evolution, but intelligent design internet gurus use these terminologies to contrast the mainstream scientific view with the pseudo-scientific view which they advertise. And 5. Use of mystical illumination and general sentiment. So if you see anyone committing these 5 sins of pseudoscience,
bring them forth to me, so that I might pass judgment. Ha 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 ha.